A grower coach on the road today. We're just out to go have a look at a property and to do a few plant assessments and see if we can find some plants in bloom that we can talk about. And yeah, it's the weather's been warming up and we got a bit of a wind. There's nothing like windy weather, you know, when it's particularly hot out. You get wind and heat and the plants just dry right out. They just desiccate. You just got to think of plants as being literally made of water, which they are, and so are we. But I think we're a lot more, let's say, sort of sealed. We can retain our moisture inside without desiccating too badly in the heat. But with plants, they're highly affected by the wind, and they just desiccate and they just dry right out. So what that means is that, you know, don't be afraid to spray water on plants in the heat of the day. There's a myth out there that says, you know, don't spray plants with water when it's hot and sunny out because it'll make spots on the leaves. I don't think so. I think that plants are adapted to living outside in all kinds of conditions, and it's quite common in nature that you'll have a hot sunny day and then you get a thunderstorm roars through and then it comes back to being hot and sunny again. And if that was true, every plant that you'd see, you know, everywhere you go after a thunderstorm, all the plants would be brown and crispy. And so it doesn't really make sense, that myth. But I'll tell you one thing, is if I was made of water and it was really hot out, if it was over 100 degrees out, and especially if it was windy, I would just love it if somebody would spray me down with water. You know, think about it, that's something that's really would make sense. And the plants are actually able to absorb moisture right through their foliage too. So whenever you get a plant that's severely wilted and it's you know, it's struggling to bring up moisture, maybe its roots are just bone dry and they're just unable to take up water, but you spray that plant down with water, soak it from top to bottom, and that just relieves the stress off the plant. And then you can start watering it at the root, and it'll eventually start to be able to uptake that water as well. But when you get roots that are bone dry, they don't get wet right away either. They become hydrophobic, where they won't uptake water because it's just too dry. So if you have plants in pots that are too dry, you can do the plunge effect. And that's where you take a bucket of water and you plunge the plant right into it and submerge it in water. And when you do that, you definitely get water into that root zone 100% once it's submerged. But by watering from the top, it just tends to run out. It runs through out the bottom of the pot, and that's it. And plants that are in the ground, if they're bone dry, you gotta just drip really slow. Again, I spray the plant top to bottom, soak it at the bottom, spray it top to bottom again, move on, maybe water a few other plants. Then I come back and I'll water it again, and it takes multiple waterings to get the water to actually soak into the ground. And it's one of the things that we, as horticulturists, we have to be cognizant of the rate at which the water will soak into the soil. It's a real, it's a challenge, and the hotter it is, you know, you just have to know. You have to know how deep that water's penetrating. And that heat, it just draws the moisture out of the ground, evaporates. They call it evapotranspiration. That's the plants, you know, absorbing the water through the roots, and then the leaves are evaporating water out of them, and it actually pulls the molecules of water up into the plant through the little semi-permeable membranes between each cell and through the sieve tubes and up the plant and into the foliage, and the water is evaporating out of the leaves. That's how they take up water. And so just one of those things that it's good to know. If you understand sort of how that works, you understand that when it's getting hot out, there's not a lot of forgiveness when it comes to plants that are wilting. So I would just say that as soon as you have plants that are wilting or starting to show those symptoms, you got to be thinking about watering them pretty quick. And if they flag, you know, and wilt really badly, often the edges of the leaves will go crispy and brown, and then the plant doesn't die from that sometimes, but it certainly loses its quality. So if you have, if you're working for a customer or a client and, all their plants are losing quality, as far as they're concerned, they consider them to be basically dead or borderline. They don't just recover that quickly. So they might recover and be okay, but they're still brown and crispy. So the only thing you can do then is take your scissors out and trim off all the edges so they're not brown and crispy anymore, which, you just don't want that. So anyway, that's sort of what we're dealing with at this time of year. We've got high temperatures now, 31, 32 degrees Celsius, which isn't that hot for us here. We can get into that 40 plus 42 degree range in the sunny Okanagan and BC. So right now we're just at that 32, which is, for me, it's about as hot as I ever need to be. I don't need it any hotter than that. So that's basically it for today, and but we'll get back once we get to our next location. Thanks for tuning in.